Tyler, thank you so much for joining us. As we start, can you maybe talk a little bit about your current role and what's in your purview?
Yeah, absolutely. So I just wrapped up a period of time as Chief Marketing Officer at Jupiter One. We've had a nice, amazing run over the last few years there, helped build that one up. Wrap that up, taking the rest of this year off, looking around trying to figure out what's going to excite me next. I spend the bulk of my time advising cybersecurity startups, younger cyber companies, application dev tooling companies, and infrastructure companies. I'm also a fractional CMO for a number of companies, as well as a cybersecurity investor in a number of cybersecurity focused companies. So spending my time doing a lot of different things. And as far as the full daytime role, that's to be determined, and take the rest of the year off and figure it out from there.
Awesome, awesome. Well, it seems like you are and you were wearing so many different hats, both as an investor, as a cybersecurity marketer. I noticed you were with Forrester for a while as an analyst in cybersecurity. You have a kind of very unique perspective. But how did it start for you? How did you get into cybersecurity marketing? What was the
Yeah, I'm a very non-traditional marketer in the sense that in some ways I'd call myself an accidental CMO. So I've been in cybersecurity my entire career, so 25 plus years. Started out actually as an R&D guy, offensive security guy, breaking into places, professional hacker for a living. Did R&D for Veracode, helped write some of their static analysis assessment tooling. I even went down. I got my master's degree in computer science and went down that rat hole. Then did my thesis was on rootkit discovery and anti-debugging in binaries. So it was like super, super technical. Then one day, kind of had this realization that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to change my career around. Went back to business school, got a MBA from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and got a job at Forrester as a market analyst. And that was kind of my first foray into the other side of the cybersecurity world. I spent 4 years talking strategy, go to market, positioning, messaging with every cybersecurity company that I could get my hands on while I was an analyst at Forrester. And from there, I left there and went and became head of marketing, VP of marketing at a company called Signal Sciences in 2015. And that was accidental. I actually remember the conversation distinctly. I said, hey, I knew the founders well. I said, hey, I can come over and be your head of strategy or something. They're like, well, we need a head of marketing. I was like, yeah, I don't know how to do marketing. I'll be your head of strategy and partnerships. And they're like, well, we need marketing. So you're going to do that too. It turns out that's pretty much all I did was head of marketing. So learned trial by fire there. That one was acquired by Fastly for just under 800 million. Did a couple of corp dev and strategy roles after that for Sonatype and CA Technologies, and came back to being a CMO at Jupiter One about 2.5 years ago now. Came in employee in the low teens and built them up to 170 or something employees, and the exceptional growth rate that we've had over the last few years.
It's amazing. It's amazing. It's a very going from technical to marketing. It's as you said, it's a non-traditional path, I guess.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's a non-traditional path, but I think it's a big differentiator because there's not a lot of CMOs who have the ability to talk bits and bytes, how the algorithms work. Oh, you're going to tell me you have AI. Well, great. Show me the clustering algorithm and show me which feature vectors are pushing the AI in that direction, right? Like most marketing people don't have the technical depth that I have, which gives me a bit of a good differentiation. It also helps on picking investment winners. It helps on, understanding different positioning, go-to-market messaging, et cetera.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I was just going to say that it does give a unique perspective, and you can talk to marketers and technical people in the same without skipping a bit, and I think it goes a long way. And given the unique perspective that you have, you can imagine cybersecurity as an industry is just exploding in scope and scale, and I think there's just so much venture money, at least up to this point, has been going into the space. And I think from the C-level executives, from the board, there is just a much deeper understanding, at least of the implications of cybersecurity. No one wants to see their name in the headlines and their own light. So I think there's just a lot more apprehension, I guess, from their part. And as a result, the number of companies, the number of people working in the space is exploding as well. And I think there is plenty of interest from either more junior marketing professionals looking at the space, trying to make a career, or even maybe students in colleges or someone looking to make a transition from either technology marketing to cybersecurity marketing, or from technology to marketing. So for those more junior professionals, what would be your advice? What would be some of the things you would recommend they would spend time on to stack the deck in their favor as they're kind of pondering career paths in front of them?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think, like I said, I had that lucky differentiator for me of being able to be very technical. And I approach marketing, I think, very differently fundamentally than a lot of current CMOs, in the sense that I'm very data driven. I'm very, very metrics focused, bottoms up, like an engineer would build a marketing engine. That's literally how I approach marketing, right? I had to learn the branding. I had to learn the storytelling because I'm an engineer first. So I had to layer on those components. But I think understanding fundamentally where you fit into the needs of that particular company or market is important when breaking into the market. So breaking into cybersecurity specifically, you have to be able to talk about the nuts, the bolts, the acronyms in use. You have to be able to at least have a fundamental understanding of that. And that goes for everybody. Like, sure, content marketing, product marketing needs to know that stuff intimately, like really, really intimately. But even your lead gen, demand gen, and event people need to know that too, because at the end of the day, they're going to be doing minor tweaks to wording and editing and pitching at events and different things like that. You have to understand the space you're getting into in order to market it well. You just have to. And even if you're not at the top level, like me at a CMO level, but you're coming in as an individual contributor level, the most important thing to do is to understand the market that you're marketing and the people you're marketing to. Spend the time to learn that. And if you learn that for a particular space, it should be fairly straightforward to move into that market as a marketing individual.
Makes a lot of sense. I mean, because if you're crafting a story, you need to understand the characters and the plot, right? Because otherwise,
yeah. Well, what people forget is that today, cyber marketing is the noisiest market that I've ever seen as far as like ability to stand out, right? Because I forget the latest stats people are touting, somewhere between 4,000 and 5,000 different security vendors now, right? Product vendors. And so CISOs are overwhelmed. So how do you stand out? Well, the best way to stand out when you're doing marketing and cybersecurity is to provide value to the audience. Literally, don't send anything to them if it doesn't provide them value. Make them smarter, make them better, make them understand something, make them interested, make them laugh. There's lots of different ways you can provide value, but you should be thinking of your marketing and cybersecurity as a product you're creating for the audience to gain value from. And if you do that, your brand stays in front of them. You get brand recognized. They say, "Oh, I love that weekly newsletter that comes out," or "I love that podcast," or "I love that piece of content they put out." And if you provide value in everything you put in front of the customer, cyber marketing becomes a lot easier.
Interesting. I think that where a lot of people are struggling is that if you look at like total addressable market for a certain company, obviously like potential clients, organizations, individuals, executives, they make decisions, and they go through stages. They go through this customer journey when they're not even aware they have a problem to aware they have a problem, they're kind of exploring the landscape. They're becoming more aware of their solutions, then vendors, then selection, and everything else. And it seems like it's obviously kind of it's a flow that goes from stage to stage.
Yep.
But it seems that once they get to the point where they're ready to buy and they're ready to engage with sales, things are easy. But those upstream stages, often they're kind of so busy putting out other fires. To your point, they're overwhelmed with noise. They have certain priorities where your problem or your solution is just not part of this top three priorities for them that they're currently addressing, top three fires they're putting out right now. So from that perspective, yes, I mean, we can provide value, but how do you connect, how to get in front of it? They just, a lot of times just, they ignore everything other than the things that are focusing right now. So in this kind of environment, noisy environment, but also where people are extra busy, they're overscheduled, they're overbooked, they're running from meeting to meeting. How do you get how do you get them to engage with the value they're providing to
Sure.
consume that?
So I think what people don't often, what people tend to think about when they think of marketing is advertising and, oh, I like it, I'm going to go sign up for it, right? And that's kind of one view into marketing. That's not how I generally view marketing. I view marketing as a funnel, and I know people in marketing get freaked out when they use the word funnel these days. They think it's a four-letter word, but I do think of it as a funnel: top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel. And you can map that life cycle, that journey, to that funnel, right? You can, and maybe it's 3 stages in a simple funnel, maybe it's 6 stages, right? The awareness, the education, down through to, hey, I have a need to buy, I'm now MQL, then I get over to sales, okay? Devise metrics in that funnel and hit every single point in that funnel with the value that's immediately recognized by the point in the funnel. So awareness, I'm not even necessarily talking about my product. I'm putting out, a newsletter once a month that has some awesome content that may or may not directly connect to my product, but has my brand in it and at least keeps that, like, it's literally just awareness, right? Same thing with maybe some awareness-based events. As you click through that, maybe you incorporate more and more of content or value that's pertinent to a buying moment, right? But measure each individual stage in that funnel and provide content and make sure you're moving people through what are your conversion rates between every section of that funnel, right? From top to middle, middle to bottom, bottom to MQL. And knowing, okay, listen, I'm filling the top of funnel great. I'm getting tons of awareness. I'm doing all these parties and events, and our brand is in front of the right people. Awareness is going great. We got tons of people up here. Middle of funnel is awesome. It's like 90% of the people come down in the 3-month period, but they all stick there and they never get to that third level. Okay, so for the next quarter, we're going to focus on breaking free that section of the funnel by providing value to the correct people in those sections to try to break free that funnel. So it's the way I do it is very metrics driven, and it becomes an engine so that you can directly pick what parts of the funnel are not converting at the moment. And it'll go through ebbs and flows and stages where certain parts convert at times and then it doesn't. Sometimes it's macroeconomic, sometimes it's not. Like, there's all sorts of things you have to track and monitor. But the key point is metrics, measurement, design of that engine, and then targeting the value at the right spots at the right time to keep people moving through. And that's how you push people through that funnel.
That makes a lot of sense, because I think it would be obvious where the blockages are, so that you would spend your efforts and your budget on areas that need fixing rather than areas that are already kind of running smoothly as is.
And here's the best part about that. People in marketing, cyber marketing today, CISOs say, don't contact me. Don't ever contact me. I never want to hear from you. I'll come find you. Well, how do they know to come find you when you're a brand new company that nobody knows about? You have to have marketing, right? But the trick is making sure that, okay, in that particular example, since nobody knows about me, I have to focus on just awareness. So how do I provide value in an awareness moment to the CISOs that I want to target? And that's how you should think of that kind of funnel. So even though CISOs are like, don't ever market to me, you can send them stuff. And if it provides them value, they're not going to unsubscribe. They're going to read it. They're going to learn from it. They're going to love it. And so that's fundamentally how you kind of counteract that don't talk to me problem.
Interesting. Kind of continuing the same vein and using the customer journey as the framework, it seems, and kind of the question that I really want to ask is around managing relationship between sales and marketing, because it seems like sales is it's very structured. Once the person is MQL, once they're ready to engage with, go through a demo or a discovery call, they have a need, they raise their hand one way or another, whether third party intent data, or they came to the website, they scheduled a call with an SDR. It's fairly clear what happens next, and it's fairly this cycle. Let's call it a sales cycle. The cycle from first conversation to transaction is fairly defined. On the one hand, this journey from unaware to getting to that point can be fairly long. And as kind of to follow up on the conversation that we had during the conference, for something to close before the end of the year, marketing had to do something a year before, like the first kind of 6 months, what have you. And I think that that kind of speaks to the way some of the incentives are structured. For example, sales, oftentimes it's quarter by quarter. They have certain numbers of deals they need to close. There is a certain revenue number that people own. And then on the other side of the wall, right? So there's marketing where their objectives are a bit more this sales cycle, let's call it this way, are much longer. And I think there's sometimes that causes friction between kind of marketing teams that go after certain objectives and sales teams that kind of vary quarter by quarter. From kind of your experience and your kind of the various chairs you sat on, what's your kind of best advice on how to structure that so that it flows smoothly and there is no friction between the two teams, because at the end of the day they all both work towards usually the same goal.
Yeah, it's almost a intractable problem. I don't think you can ever get it to zero friction. I think there's just going to be a natural friction of that. What people have to understand with regards to kind of like that process handover between marketing and sales is that marketing can make our numbers be anything we want to. Like if I have 100,000 people in my funnel and I'm getting yelled at by the SDRs that I'm not giving enough MQLs, I just changed the lead scoring algorithm to bump more MQLs, right? The quality is going to go down, but I can give you volume, right? Simultaneously, if they're like, oh, you're giving us too much trash, I'll be like, great. I just change the scoring algorithm, tweak it the other way, and I give you higher quality, but lower volume, right? So at the end of the day, you can't always just think of the raw numbers with regards to conversion rates and things like that. However, you can't leave it behind either, because the metrics around that are how you understand how you're doing as a marketing and sales organization, right? So I don't think you should be necessarily driven by those metrics, but really the two metrics that I drive to that are the most important metrics in sales and marketing are pipeline created or deals created, right? Coming out of marketing. It doesn't matter whether they come from marketing, come from sales. How much pipeline can we create in a month, a quarter, a year, whatever the timeline is, right? That's the most important one for marketing for sure. The second most important one is how much money can we close when, right? Those are the two metrics that matter. And then you start to chop things like, hey, what are the first touch lead sources that drive that pipe? What are the last touch lead sources that drive that pipe? What are the most influential marketing campaigns that have driven that pipe? Because then you can look at the metrics and say, if we provide value using this style of campaign in this moment in the funnel, that's having a very high efficacy from an influence perspective to driving additional pipeline. Right. And so you start to look at the data in that way. And that's how you determine what things you want to tweak, add on to, double down on, where your win rates and efficacy rates are in the marketing funnel. That will generate both higher quantity of MQL while maintaining quality. And that's our goal, to drive better pipeline. It's a hard problem. Like you're never going to have zero friction. And a lot of that comes from the culture between you and the CRO. If you and the CRO work really well together hand in hand and say, hey, what really matters is pipe driving, who cares where it comes from? And then in the back, you're doing all your analysis to know where to double down, but you're not necessarily pushing that as a cultural narrative. You can create a cultural situation where the team acts as one, but it is a very difficult problem to solve. Certainly.
Well, I think it's also, if there's a pull, if the product resonates in the market and there is growth, happy times. I think things work well.
It certainly helps.
It's only when we're short of the number or the expectations are kind of not realistic or something changes, right? So people are expecting 2023 to be to have some strong headwinds. Mm-hmm. So when things fall apart, then that's when the finger
it'll start pointing. It'll start pointing for sure. And I think being realistic with your goal setting and realistic with your expectations as a business, both at the executive level, at the board level, and at the individual team level, right? So to me, all those metrics and expectations and goals cascade all the way down to the individual contributor. So I give my lead gen, demand gen lead, here's our goals. Let's go hit it. I give our content person, here's our goals. These are the ones that are defined for you, right? So I'm very metrics and goal driven all the way down to the individual contributor level, so that everybody's running towards the same end state, right? Everybody knows what that end state is and they're all running towards it. But yeah, I think being realistic on expectations and not going, hey, we're going to hit 50 million this year just because I said so. Like you have to be real as to look at the history, look at the growth percentages, look at what might be achievable, and setting goals that make sense, and then going and getting there, right? Letting that cascade downward and tactically executing to that goal. So as we move into 2023, people should be readjusting their goals, right? We should be saying the reality is no longer 50 million for our expectation. We believe, given the historical growth, what we've seen from macroeconomic impact in the last 6 months, we now believe we're going to hit 42 or whatever the numbers work out to be.
Certainly.
Right. So it's setting realistic expectations.
Certainly. And speaking of 2023, I think a lot of especially in the startup world, a lot of companies raised incredible rounds of funding. And I think when the expectation is grow, there are certain excesses in the system, right? So we over invest in certain channels that don't produce as much. There is this concept of winner takes all. So obviously there's competition. Also, the product lines are blurring as companies stretch for growth. They try to invade adjacent kind of territories as far as the product is concerned. So there's a lot of that going on. So, and I think at least from my perspective, there'll be a lot of adjustment in terms of what the company was built for, the momentum, right? And money is no object, to the point where it kind of is. So what's your advice for cybersecurity marketers? Because I'm hearing kind of different stories. Some companies, it's still kind of full steam ahead. Other companies in panic mode because the expectations of the deliverables didn't change. It just, the budgets were cut in half and the team was cut in half, but the deliverables are kind of staying the same. And they're a little bit of kind of trying to figure out how to make it happen. So, and it's probably kind of a range of outcomes. But for companies who are going through this adjustment, for cybersecurity marketers, what would be your advice?
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about that and why you're hearing a number of different responses is it depends on the state of the company prior to the macroeconomic crush, how much they raised, what their burn rates were, what their runway looked like, how efficient they were operating. Were they, targeting healthy company status, profitable status in a reasonable time frame? Were they looking at the true no holds barred, burn everything and tackle the market of the massive way approach? So there's such a range of companies' styles that's why you get a range of answers, because it depends largely on how the company has been run to date as to what its response should be. If you had been a heavily overinvested VC company and you decided that you're going to burn hard and try to tackle the market and kind of run it over, you're probably laying off 20%, 30%, 40% of your staff, your valuation /50%. You're going to have to do more with less.'re going to have to learn to be extremely efficient in what you do and very metrics driven. But I think part of the reality, and the flip side of that is if you're done in a very healthy way, you just keep going, status quo. Hey man, we're in good shape, right? We're running pretty lean. We're not burning too hard. We got 3 years worth of runway, no problem. But I think most companies are probably somewhere in the middle, right? And what is the net result on the average company based on this macroeconomic crush is efficiencies have to increase to be able to meet these expectations. And, there's going to have to be a day of reckoning where the expectations are properly reset, right? If you cut 50% of valuation and you cut 30% of marketing spend and 30% of sales spend, you just can't reach the same goal. It's no longer an achievable goal. And it goes back to my point. Founders are going to need to set aside the ego and say, hey, our valuation is now this. Because of that, we are now striving for this new end ARR state at the end of 2023. And given that, can the metrics support that goal? If not, let's readjust that goal to fit reality. And I think there's going to have to be a day of reckoning for most founders to understand what that new expectation of reality in a go forth way is going to be.
And hopefully they're not diluted to nothing at that point, so they're still incentivized to stay in the game.
At the end of the day, they may or may not be, right? At the end of the day, they may look at it and go, hey, if I can get X amount of millions of dollars on this thing and get out of it, I'm going to go ahead and do that, right? I may be incented to do that now. And some of the super burn hards that are not adjusting fast enough or cutting fast enough, they may find 2023 is the year of M&A and the year of exits and the year of liquidity for a lot of these companies, just because it just makes more sense than trying to recap, take a down round, take a crush. It just might make sense to exit the thing and just start over with something else.
It seems like Palo Alto M&A department, they're just salivating over the carnage.
Yeah, and they're still going to overpay because that's the Palo Alto way. They pay a lot, right? They pay healthy numbers. The Cider acquisition is a great example. That was a very strong multiple on their revenue, from what I understand. But at the end of the day, it was only a $200 million cash acquisition, 100 in equity on top of that, so 300 total. So that acquisition was a small one in Palo Alto standards, right? So that's just a drop in the bucket for their model.
Yeah, well, I think it's there's a lot to be said for consolidation, and I think CISOs, to your point, no one has the bandwidth to deal with dozens and dozens of vendors. I think they just want one relationship or a handful of relationships, right? It's really consolidation one way or another, either through M&A or through some sort of partnership will probably have to happen.
Yeah, we've been predicting for years now that a roll up in cyber has to occur, right? Too many vendors, too many products, non-integrations. And it's never happened. I've been saying it's happened. It's got to happen for the last 4 or 5 years. It just hasn't happened. And I wonder if the macroeconomic downturn is what finally gets us there.
Well, probably. I mean, it's probably going to be a forcing function, right? So if and you're already hearing that. So some companies jumped into the IPO window, like SentinelOne, and other companies didn't, like Cybereason. And I think you're hearing that for those who are kind of second wave, third wave, for them, they're kind of assessing their options because it's more and more difficult to raise subsequent rounds of financing, and IPO window has temporarily closed until kind of further notice, and it's going to be.
The ones that are going to lick their lips the most and really salivate right now are private equity. You're going to see a lot of private equity acquisitions and roll-ups.
Interesting. And going back to kind of marketing, to the tech stack and to tactics, it's kind of like there were kind of themes that are going through, and not just cybersecurity marketing, but in general. I think at one point it was all about inbound. I think HubSpot was the one who pioneered this. It's all inbound and content. But at some point, people realized that it only converts a fraction of a percent. And obviously, with technology, you can generate content and distribute content with huge scale, and attention doesn't upgrade at nearly the same. Well, it doesn't upgrade at all, right? So everyone has only so much they can process at any given point in time, 24 hours a day. Then it seems like large-scale conferences like RSA or Black Hat was huge. They were huge aggregators of attention, I guess, and decision makers. Then with COVID all went away. It was all about webinars and virtual roundtables. So we're not talking about, obviously, about silver bullets, but what's working for you now from your perspective?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to try to understand, right? Because given the way I define the model that I like to build, and I apologize if you can hear the dogs, they're yapping downstairs, but of course it wouldn't be a podcast or a live show if we didn't have the dogs. So I don't believe in trends in marketing. I think at the end of the day, the engine is defined as it's defined, and everything plays into a piece of that, right? So let's take inbound. Inbound was the hot thing. Really, what is inbound is providing valuable content so that they come to you, right? It's no different than any other piece of the engine where you provide them value. They recognize your brand, they recognize the value, and they eventually, when their buying moment is right, you can't force a buying moment on someone. You can't just say, hey, here's this cool ass product. I know you don't have the problem now, but you should have this problem, so come buy my stuff. That's not how it works. You educate, you show, you demonstrate, you provide value to them in everything that you do. And then when they have the buying moment of, hey, I have that pain, I go to you, right? And so I don't believe in PLG as a fundamental only way to do things. And that's product-led growth. I don't believe in inbound only. I don't believe in outbound only. I believe it all plays into an engine. I don't believe necessarily in ABM only. I believe it all plays into an engine where all of those things can and should be done based off of what the return on the tactic yields you. Is if your audience responds to ABM and gift giving via, like a Sendoso style sending model, then use it, double down on it and use it. If they don't, like a lot of CISOs now are saying, hey, I don't need another Yeti. I have 37 Yetis. I don't want any more of them. Well, guess what? You're not providing value with the ABM model that sends Yetis, but maybe the ABM model that sends tickets to the local, local sporting event will work. So you have to do a lot of trial and error. Marketing is agile by its very nature. Trial and error on multiple tactics till you find the one that delivers the value. Maybe it's ABM, maybe it's inbound, maybe it's outbound, maybe it's PLG. All of those things are completely dependent on your business, your model, your product, your market, your buyer. You have to just use and explore. And that it's funny, I do a lot of fractional CMO style work. And when I talk with companies, they're like, oh, you have a couple great exits as a CMO. And I'm like, yeah, but it doesn't mean I have any idea how to do yours. Right. And that goes for every cyber company is unique, right? I can't just say, well, I have a cyber GTM playbook. Here you go. It doesn't work that way. It's largely dependent on your product. All those things that I mentioned.
Well, it depends on the stage. It depends on the stage. It depends on maturity of technology. It depends on what persona you're addressing. It depends how crowded or not the market is.
That's why if you ever talk to a senior CMO and they say, you need to do this, and they haven't asked you all those questions, they don't know what they're talking about. They know one thing. They know what worked for them once, and they're trying to push it into your world. Don't fall for that.
Interesting. So basically, those tactics or they're tools in a toolbox, right? And whether you're going to use a screwdriver or a saw, it really depends on which one is effective.
Absolutely.
What specific objective you're trying to accomplish, and at different times, different tools may produce different results, and you need to be flexible enough to recognize that and not use one of them as a silver bullet, because they're not.
Absolutely. 100%. That's exactly right. And then iterate, fail fast, figure out what does work, and then double down and get it to work. And it might be different stages in that funnel, right? This quarter, top of funnel's weak. We know we have these tools that work for top of funnel. This one worked really well. Let's double down on that for next quarter. That's how you have to think logically, very agile and system thinking almost. Yeah.
Awesome. I know we're coming up on time, Tyler. Last question. Well, one of the last questions. Let's say you have a crystal ball. You can see into the future. 12 months from now, what are the top 3 things cybersecurity marketers will be obsessing about?
Oh, gosh. I hope it's not PLG, but I have a gut feeling it'll be product-led growth still, which is fine, although I can only think of maybe 2 PLG companies in security that have ever been successful with a PLG-only model. They'll probably still be obsessing over PLG. I think integrations is going to be massive. And I'm already hearing that grumbling from the CSO world pretty regularly. They want less tools, more integrations, more platforms. However, those are hard to build. They're really difficult to build from scratch. They end up being a roll up, or kind of like Palo Alto did by acquisition of a dozen companies and roll them into a platform. But I think APIs, integrations, and product-led growth for better or worse will be the 2023 initiatives in cyber in marketing.
Awesome. Interesting. So maybe we'll chat, in December 2023.
I'd love to reevaluate the end of next year.
Put check marks to all the predictions.
It'll probably be 3 X's, but hey, we just won't meet. If that's the case, if it's 3 X's, we're just going to cancel our next call.
Oh, I think it'll be check marks. I think you're in the money, at least for some of them. I'm curious. The dark funnel and ungating content is not one of them, but it remains to be seen. Tyler, thank you so much for taking time for this. I think it was very instructive, very interesting. I enjoyed the conversation. Where people can find you? Are you on Twitter, LinkedIn?
Yeah, absolutely. So email is super easy. It's tyler.shields@gmail.com. Feel free to email me directly. I'm also on LinkedIn, and you should be able to find me first name, last name on there. And then on Twitter, I have one of the, previously coveted 3-letter Twitter handles, TXS, which are my initials, but I don't know how long those will last with Elon's antics. So we'll see.
Awesome. Tyler, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.